Welcome to our attendees, both in the U.S. and internationally. I'm Joe Lowndes, Board President of the Chicago Art Deco Society. It's my pleasure to welcome each of you to this event, produced in collaboration with the Calcutta Heritage Collective. Today's presentation describes the evolution of Art Deco in Calcutta from the time of its introduction shortly after the Paris exhibition of 1925 and concluding with the post-World War II period. This 25-year period was a time of great turmoil in Calcutta. It's an important story that needs to be better known. CADS is honored to offer a platform to bring this story to a wider audience. Our presenter, Adhiraj Bose, is a corporate attorney and lifelong resident of Calcutta. He has been researching the history of Art Deco in Calcutta for several years, both independently and in collaboration with the Calcutta Heritage Collective. A representative of the collective will be speaking to us after the presentation. A recording of today's talk will be available to registered guests who request it. A complete transcript of the lecture will be included. At the conclusion of the presentation, Adhiraj will be available to answer questions. At any time during or immediately after the presentation, viewers may submit questions using the chat feature at the bottom of the screen. Our moderator will then present them to Adhiraj for his response. Now it's my honor to welcome our presenter, Adhiraj Bose.
Greetings, everyone. I am Adhiraj Bose, and for the last 7 years, I have been documenting the Art Deco buildings of Calcutta, the cultural capital of India and the city of palaces. It is the centenary year of the Paris exhibition, the event that marked the formal beginning of the Art Deco movement, the style that took the world by storm from the shores of America to East Asia. Art Deco also graced the avenues of Calcutta, and it is my honor and privilege to take you through this journey of Calcutta's Art Deco. We start at the beginning, not in Calcutta, but in Paris in the year 1925, when the Paris exhibition for the modern, decorative, and industrial arts took place. The year is significant as it was in the world that rose in the aftermath of the First World War. The old empires were falling apart, old traditions which held sway seemed to be melting away, transitioning to a new and bold world of new ideas in society, art, politics, and economics. This was the world in which Art Deco emerged. The design ideas which we would eventually characterize as Art Deco were already finding a place in Europe in the decade of the 1910s. The Paris exhibition itself was supposed to take place in 1914, was delayed by the First World War by about a decade. It is important to keep this context in mind, as Art Deco's bold, modern sensibilities resonated well with the nations of Asia, which had long been under the influence or outright rule of the now declining colonial empires. Art Deco was the first truly universal architectural style, but one that was flexible in its design, enough to adapt to local sensibilities and artistic tastes. A fine example is the sunburst motif seen here on the Galerie Lafayette and the Paris exhibition. The building we see here bears many of the same motifs we will later find in Calcutta Art Deco buildings. The sunburst motif dominates the facade of the building, while fluted columns dominate the grand entrance, flanking this grand stairway that greets visitors. Decorative statuettes grace the top of these columns. Fluted columns and stepped spires are another Art Deco feature, incorporated with more gusto in commercial buildings such as offices. Here we see that design in the pillars of the principal entranceway of the Paris exhibition. The more ornamental entranceway can be contrasted with the far less ornamented and sleek tourism pavilion in the background. These are design features, as we will see, find their way into Calcutta, brought in through architects inspired by these designs, having visited the exhibition or having learnt of these designs. Ironic in a way since India did not have any dedicated pavilion in the exhibition. Most from Calcutta would be familiar with this imposing landmark located in the heart of the city. This is the Tower House, built in 1928 in a very ornamental Art Deco style. The building is replete with beautiful decorative motifs from sunbursts to fluted columns and a step back ziggurat spire. The building was designed by the architecture firm Sudlow, Baladi and Thompson, also known as Baladi, Thompson and Matthews, for the real estate company J. Talbot and Company. This building marked the glamorous arrival of Art Deco into Calcutta and set the stage for developments over the next few decades. Many of these buildings would be designed by the architecture firm Sudlow, Baladi Thompson, which at one point was the largest architecture firm in all of Asia. While Calcuttans are more familiar with the names of Walter Granville, who designed the General Post Office, or Martin Byrne and Sir Biren Mukherjee, with the Howrah Bridge, the name of Sudlow Baladi Thompson has been largely forgotten. Formed in 1919 by the city architect for Calcutta, H. Leslie Baladi and Harold Sudlow, they would go on to build some of Calcutta's most prominent Art Deco buildings. That journey began with the Tower House, a monument that still stands and is very much still in use as an office. Here we see a close up of some of the Art Deco elements of the building: the step back arch design on the facade, the unique variant of the sunburst motifs on the balcony grills. And while most Indian cities did not embrace the louvered windows, Calcutta did. In a rather unique anachronism of Calcutta Art Deco, these windows could be found alongside the very modern decorative sensibilities of Art Deco buildings. One of the most unique features of the Tower House is the lotus bed pedestal for the finial. This photograph was taken in more recent years after the spire had suffered damage following the cyclone of 2016. The cyclone had costed the building its finial and some of the base was chipped away. The lotus motif is a typical traditional Indian design and it was incorporated into the design of the Tower House. For comparison, here is a picture from before the cyclone, with the finial of the structure still intact. Art Deco in Calcutta did not remain confined to the city. The designs that found a place here inspired others in the city's periphery and across the province of Bengal. As a sign of this influence, we can see how the Tower House's design inspired the landlord of Tangal in today's Bangladesh. We see a near identical copy of the Tower House's finial and step back spire, as well as the columns along its facade. In a complete contrast to the Tower House, we have this very modern looking mansion. This is the mansion of the Sen family on Elgin Road, otherwise known locally as the Jahajbari. Built for the Sen family and designed by the architect Orson Bryant, it incorporates maritime features, a common trend across Art Deco buildings. The building's overall structure is designed to resemble the stern of a ship, with port windows and straight streamlined railings. The architect Orjun Rai would go on to make similar quirky streamlined modern mansions, with his other work being the neighboring state of Jharkhand, a mansion in the shape of an aeroplane. Quite in contrast to the Tower House, this mansion represents a different direction for Art Deco architecture in the city. On the one hand was the heavily ornamented tower house that incorporated brick and stucco. On the other hand, we have this plain RCC cement construction which incorporates glass panels, streamlined modern maritime features. The Sen mansion represented one of the first Art Deco mansions in Calcutta and the first so-called Jahaj Bari. Built around the same time as the Tower House, it represents one of the first Art Deco buildings in the city. Art Deco's influence wasn't limited to architecture, but influenced everything from jewelry, fashion to interior design. Here we have an example of a bookcase that incorporates the sunburst motif and waterfall patterns along the sides. The sunburst motif also found a place in grill design. Seen here are the railings of the Raja Chambers apartment near High Court. Stairways were a prominent part of Art Deco interiors and saw much adornment, such as here. The Art Deco period saw the rise in terrazzo usage, with terrazzo being used to make ornamental tiles, slabs for facades, and flooring tiles. Here we see the floor of a mansion in Uttarpara, just northwest of Calcutta, that follows a maritime sea wave pattern. While terrazzo was gaining in popularity, marble tiles could still be seen widely used. On the left are the deco patterned marble tiles of the Raja chambers, and on the right, the painted flooring tiles of a house in eastern Calcutta, bearing some unique geometric patterns. It wasn't just buildings either. Art Deco influenced the locomotive designs. The Mercury Streamliner is, of course, iconic in its streamlined design. Following a similar aesthetic was Calcutta's own L-class trams. Designed in Britain, these tramcars were assembled in Calcutta and introduced to the service in 1940. Coach had a sleek, streamlined, modern look, with speed lines embracing the sides of the coach and over the top, adorning a rather aerodynamic style shell. The city was and still is synonymous with the tram, having the oldest continually operated tramway system in Asia. At its peak, Calcutta's tramways covered a wide network connecting every part of the city and its suburbs, catering to a monthly passenger count of 750,000, the busiest tram system in the world. Today, the tramways are only a today the tramways are but a shadow of its former self, and the L-class trams are slowly withering away in poorly maintained tram depots. The tram was but one part of a well-oiled system that ran Calcutta. It would be a surprise to many, but in its heyday, Calcutta, and not Bombay, was the economic center of the Indian subcontinent. It was but natural that Art Deco would become the architecture of commerce here in this city. In the aftermath of the First World War, the British Empire was left bankrupt and weakened, and the Art Deco era of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, Calcutta still held sway as the financial and industrial capital of the Raj. It was the largest city between Suez and Singapore, and until 1911, it was the capital of the sprawling British Raj. The aspirations of Indian business coincided with the coming of Art Deco. Soon, Art Deco became the architecture of choice for commerce. Calcutta had been historically dominated by European and especially British entrepreneurs, but this saw a shift as newly emerging Indian entrepreneurs and Indian enterprises began to displace the dominance of Europeans. Art Deco became an expression of this newfound confidence, a signature marking the shift from European dominance towards native Indian assertion. Changes in the city's urban landscape would influence the rise of Calcutta's first Art Deco cluster, especially around its new central business district. The creation of a wide avenue connecting north and central Calcutta, the Central Avenue, led to the rise of a posh new location with stylish, up and coming office buildings. Buildings such as this, the Hindustan buildings, seen here, which graces Central Avenue. It is worth remembering that Art Deco arrived to India right around the time that Gandhi's first national satyagraha movements began in 1920. The independence movement was gaining speed. A national consciousness was emerging among Indians. And now a new architectural style had entered the fray. For entrepreneurs with a nationalist mindset, competing against their European peers, the choice of Art Deco was more than just keeping up with the times. It was a challenge to the architectural status quo of neoclassical and Baroque, which characterized so many imposing Victorian administrative buildings. In this climate charged with nationalism and a new national consciousness, a unique fusion of Art Deco and traditional styles emerged that historian John Lang calls Indie Deco, or as our friends in Bombay call Swadeshi Deco. Seen here is a fine example of what such a fusion looks like. The Hindu Mutual Building, built in 1940. It stands a stone's throw away from the Hindustan Building with a markedly different architectural style. Here we see the spire of a Hindu temple, the railing design of a Buddhist stupa, the pillars reminiscent of a Buddhist cave, and arches reminiscent of Mauryan architecture, coexisting with the vertical glass columns and a corner facade structure so typical of Art Deco buildings. The minimalist lines, ledges, and clean sweeping curves were the hallmark of Art Deco architecture. The fusion of styles wasn't limited to Hindu motifs either. You see here Islamic motifs made in an Art Deco style on two buildings near Central Avenue. On the left, we see the Islamic motifs on the imperial buildings located on Ganesh Chandra Avenue. And on the right, we see at 63A Benting Street, very near to the Tower House. It is easy to forget now, but Calcutta was once a melting pot of cultures, being one of the most sought after cities in the world for foreigners to migrate to in India. Calcutta still hosts a community of Chinese, Parsis, and once boasted the largest number of foreign born citizens in India. The cosmopolitan milieu of the city lent itself to the culture of Calcutta, creating conditions for a rich exchange of ideas and cultures. Each community embraced the Art Deco aesthetic in their own way. Seen here to the left is the Chinese temple, Chongyi Thong Temple, and to the right, the Parsi Ravanga. Ravanga is a site where the last rites of Zoroastrian Parsis are conducted. The latter is also an interesting case of an Art Deco ziggurat and streamlined modern features being added to an older, more neoclassical looking structure, creating a beautiful yet anachronistic look. Among the landmarks of Central Avenue stand the Laha Paint House, another beautiful example of Indie Deco fusion. The Laha family are considered as one of the foundational families of the city, and they have a prolific paint business. The paint house belongs to them. This building features ornate brackets holding oval cantilevered balconies. The facade and roadside entrance sports interesting Chinese style patterns, while the entranceway is graced by terrazzo columns. The lotus features in the design of the lift and the motif on the top of the gate are interesting elements of traditional Indian art and architecture incorporated into this building. As popular as ornamentation was early on, it would be streamlined modern that would come to define the Art Deco architecture of Calcutta. This is as true for office buildings as it is for bungalows that came up in the suburbs of the city decades later. One of the largest, most well known streamlined modern buildings in the city is the Hindustan Buildings. Built for the Hindustan Cooperative Insurance Society Limited, it was designed by the Austrian architect Hans Glas. Quite unlike its earlier peers in the Tower House or contemporaries like the Laha Paint House, the Hindustan Buildings has little to no ornamentation, relying instead on clean lines, geometric patterns, curves, port windows, and the decorative signage for ornamentation. The Hindustan Buildings contains within itself layers of history. As architect, Hans Glas was an Austrian Jewish architect who came to India after the Anschluss, where Germany annexed Austria. The company which hired him was founded by Surendranath Tagore, one of the pioneering Swadeshi entrepreneurs of Bengal. At the time of its construction, the company was chaired by Nulini Ranjan Sarkar, who was once the finance minister of Bengal. Thus, it is at once a witness to the history of the Swadeshi movement, the independence movement, and the Holocaust. Not far from the Hindustan Building stands another streamlined modern edifice, the Wellesley Building. This is another edifice designed by Sudlo Banerjee Thompson and stands as a contrast to the neoclassical structures that surround it. Located off the colonial heart of Calcutta in DVD Bagh, formerly Dalhousie Square, the Wellesley Building showed the wide aesthetic range of Sudlo Banerjee Thompson experimented with, from neoclassical architecture to Art Deco and later on with modernism. 13 years had passed between the building of the Tower House and the Wellesley House, and represented two very contrasting Art Deco sensibilities, from the heavily ornamented to the minimally ornamented, streamlined modern. Around the time that Wellesley House was merged, more office buildings graced Central Avenue. Here we see the former office of the Albert David Pharmaceutical Company. It is a more ornamental variety of the streamlined modern style. It bears curved edges reminiscent of the Galerie Lafayette. It has fluted columns along the facade and bears a corner facade that is so common among Central Avenue's office buildings. This building bears witness to a time when Calcutta was also the center of India's pharmaceutical industry, being the place where the oldest pharmaceutical company of Asia was founded, Bengal Chemicals. A prominent feature of central Calcutta's Art Deco office buildings was the ornamented facade. The most imposing quality of these buildings is the facade in the corner, often gracing the street corners, which became the focus of the building's ornamentation. The corner facade was the central pillar of the building, from which the rest of the building would extend in symmetrical wings in either direction. An example of this style of building is the General Electric Company headquarters of Calcutta, known as the Magnet House. One of the most interesting features of the buildings are the columns, the decorative statuettes at the entrance, and the arched vertical glass panel that dominates the facade. The features present here would find their way around Central Avenue's office buildings. Today, neither General Electric nor the Magnet House name remains. Instead, the building has been transformed into Calcutta's premier electronics mall. None of the original design features are visible anymore, though this piece of Calcutta's Art Deco heritage has been erased. The new avenues of central Calcutta remains home to one of the most intact cluster of Art Deco buildings. Not long after the construction of Central Avenue, connecting North and Center, came the Ganesh Chandra Avenue, connecting Central Avenue with Eastern Calcutta. This is home to the other most intact Art Deco office cluster in Calcutta. Ganesh Chandra Avenue, or GC Avenue for short, is named after the freedom fighter Ganesh Chandra Guha. The avenue was built in sometime around 1930, about a decade after Central Avenue's construction. Together with the Central Avenue, Ganesh Chandra Avenue created a new urban landscape, traced by imposing Art Deco office buildings. A new business district emerged with Central Avenue on the one hand and Ganesh Chandra Avenue on the other hand in this region, propelled primarily by the ambitions of Indian entrepreneurs. There is hardly any European name on the buildings of JC Avenue. Seen here is a wide shot of the main cluster of Art Deco buildings along JC Avenue. Ganesh Chandra Avenue was constructed at a later period than the Central Avenue, but both avenues saw the construction of Art Deco buildings around the same time. They have many of the same architectural signatures in terms of ornamentation and style. Seen here is arguably the most beautiful of GC Avenue's Art Deco buildings, the Guha buildings. The vertical glass panel, columns, and decorative motifs are back to the Tower House on Central Avenue, built in 1928. The design of these buildings was such that it draws one's attention upwards. The juxtaposition of vertical glass panels with the ornamented stepped arched entranceway has its effect. The beautiful use of stylized fonts and speed lines completes the aesthetics of this building's exterior. The interiors of the Guha buildings is quite typical of the understated elegance that defines the aesthetic quality of the Art Deco office buildings. We see here an interior view of the vertical glass panels, the stylish railings along the stairway, and the terrazzo flooring. Here we see some of the other buildings nearby, the Shantinivas and the Bengal Chemicals office buildings, both later constructions of the 1940s. Both use corner facades and forego ornamentation for minimalism. Speed lines, ledges, and a few prominent ornamental features like the flagpole and the geometric pattern of the Shantinivas characterize the ornamentation of these buildings. Across the road from the Bengal Chemicals office is the Shaha Court, whose only ornamental feature is the spire that tops off this elegant corner facade, and the ledges by the side. These design features take heavily from other Art Deco buildings along Central Avenue. While Art Deco entrenched itself in the realm of business, it did not gain the widespread popularity that we are more familiar with until it was embraced by cinema. Indeed, most Calcuttans would only know of Art Deco from the bungalow houses of South Calcutta rather than the monumental offices of Central Calcutta. However, even those houses would not have come about were it not for the theatres of Central Calcutta. In the first decade of Art Deco in Calcutta, we saw it emerge as a niche style for office buildings. The next decade would see it flourish and become the architectural mainstream of the city. Art Deco made its mark in the late 20s and throughout the 30s as an architecture for commercial buildings, be it offices or industrial construction. But these did not have the same emotional resonance as would be the case with single screen theatres. Calcutta was the birthplace of cinema in India, where Hiralal Sen made India's first feature film, Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. Bengal was fertile ground for the growth of cinema, and an inseparable part of this was the growth of theatres, which were truly motion picture palaces. As Art Deco had already established itself in the city, it was perhaps inevitable that the style would be embraced as the architectural choice for cinema halls. The first cinema hall to be built in the Art Deco style was the Metro Theatre, built by the itinerant British architect Thomas Lamb. Art Deco made its mark in the late 20s and throughout the 30s as an architecture for commercial buildings, be it offices or industrial constructions. But these did not have the same emotional resonance as would be the case with single screen theatres. Calcutta was the birthplace of cinema in India, where Hiralal Sen had made the first Indian motion picture, the Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. Bengal was fertile ground for the growth of cinema, and an inseparable part of this growth was that of theatres, which were truly motion picture palaces. As Art Deco had already established itself in the city, it was perhaps inevitable that the style would be embraced as the architectural choice for cinema theatres. The first cinema hall to be built in the Art Deco style was the Metro Theatre, built and designed by the itinerant British architect Thomas Lamb. The Metro has its kin in Bombay and Alexandria, Egypt, all of which bear the imprint of Thomas Lamb's glamorous yet restrained Art Deco style. The Metro Theatre caught the attention of the city's Bengali gentry. This new glamorous entertainment venue turned what had been a rather niche and dry style concentrated in the city's business district into a wider trend. In time, upwardly mobile Bengali gentlemen would try to fashion their homes in the style of the metro city. Pictured here is the Metro Cinema as it was in 1949, when it was still owned by the MGM studio. Unfortunately, the Metro Cinema did not escape the fate of most modern single screen cinema halls in Calcutta. Competition from multiplexes, the rise of cable TV, and easier access to movies cut down the business of the halls dramatically. By 2012, the Metro Cinema had shut down. The hall has now been renovated and converted into a mall and multiplex, with the lobby and facade retained and restored. Here we can make a before and after comparison of the hall. The grand staircase with the streamlined modern railings have been preserved, as have the fluted columns along the side walls. The overall structure of the lobby remains largely intact, while the theatre's movie hall has been demolished to make way for the mall building. Here we see a picture of the Metro Cinema shortly before its opening. The iconic facade with its waterfall design and the ziggurat structure has been kept intact and refurbished. Unfortunately, the original Metro Cinema signage has been replaced by a new recreation. The new structure, which houses the mall, keeps some of the deco features in its facade, prominently the waterfall facade. Here is another shot taken more recently, showcasing the new metro signage. Central Calcutta was already the city's business and administrative center. However, it would evolve into the city's entertainment and retail center as well. The coming of the first cinema hall in the form of modern theatres, and the establishment of the SS Hog Market, known locally as the New Market or Common, would transform the area into the city's entertainment and retail hub. The mushrooming of cinema halls in the 30s and 40s, with the Metro Cinema in 1935, the Elite Cinema in 1940, Lighthouse in 1941, Society in 1940, Paradise Cinema in 1943, Regal in 1942, and New Empire in 1940 would make this the hub of cinema in the city. Now, only a few of these are still standing as cinema halls. Pictured here is the Elite from 2012. Sadly, it has now been demolished. Seen here is the Paradise Cinema Hall, built in 1937. It was one of the premier entertainment venues of central Calcutta, but unlike the Metro Cinema, it catered primarily to an Indian audience, showing Hindi films. Well, shortly after the Metro Cinema, we can see some of the features of the Metro Cinema's architectural style. The structure of the hall is built around the ziggurat style. The tops of the building is adorned with waterfall friezes. The lobby maintains an elegant design that typifies cinema halls. The Regal Cinema Hall here is an interesting case because it started life as a performance mill or theatre. Cinema halls in Calcutta had a dual purpose, showing both cinemas and theatrical performance. The Regal was converted into this Art Deco form that you see here in 1942. It has large port windows, ziggurat feature, and wave patterns on top. Sadly, this hall has also been renovated into something of a food hub. None of these features are retained in the new structure. Central Calcutta emerged as the first entertainment center of the city. But the spread of Art Deco theatres wasn't limited to central Calcutta. Soon, Bengali entrepreneurs would build their own entertainment zone further up north. Para is a colloquial term in Bengali to denote neighborhood. The theatre Para of North Calcutta, as the name suggests, was the home of Bengali theatres. Competing with the entrenched entertainment zone of central Calcutta, North Calcutta's own theatre part was home to Bengali cinema, catering chiefly to a Bengali audience. The development of this theatre para was made possible by tram routes which connected the city north to south and east to west. Theatres would be built in areas, usually near busy marketplaces and along the main tram routes. This was true for central Calcutta as it was for North Calcutta. North Calcutta is more famous for its opulent Baroque and neoclassical architecture, but Art Deco made its mark through the elegant theatres of this neighborhood. Seen here is the Mithras Theatre, which began its life as the Chitra Theatre in 1930. The Art Deco makeover happened about a decade later, drawing from the same ziggurat style pattern of central Calcutta single screen picture boxes. Seen here are two other theatres in the vicinity with trams plying by. This route is still active as of today. On the left, we have the Minar Cinema, and on the right, the Darpana Cinema. Only the Minar Cinema is left running today, still showing Bengali movies. Here stood Radha Cinema, built on the ground floor of an Art Deco apartment building. The cinema closed down about a decade ago, with the area being given away for a departmental store. The rest of the structure houses offices and houses till today. The structure, as we can see, follows a typical imposing design reminiscent of central Calcutta's Art Deco office buildings. A single tower bearing the vertical glass panel, an ornamented central column, and ledges along the side. Cinema palaces were only one part of the entertainment scene in this time. The Art Deco's rise was synonymous with the Jazz Age, and Calcutta too witnessed the rise of jazz, swing, and Western music. Until about the 1980s, Calcutta had a thriving jazz scene and was regarded by most as one of the centers of jazz and swing in India. In the 1930s and 40s, jazz artists like Teddy Weatherford would make Calcutta his home, recording compositions here. Hotels like the Grand Hotel would host singers and musicians like Teddy Weatherford, Cricket Smith, Leon Abbey, who would tour the city. Teddy Weatherford would settle in Calcutta, marry an Anglo-Indian, and eventually die in the city. He is still buried. Restaurants like Purple's and clubs like Golden Slippers near Newmarket hosted jazz musicians. The city's clubs and restaurants provided a platform for Western musical tastes to spread and permeate. They also provided a readily available source of entertainment for the military personnel stationed in the city during the Second World War. The clubs and restaurants of the city would continue to host singers well into the 70s and early 80s. Seen here is the stage of the legendary Golden Slippers Dance Club, one of the prime venues for jazz and swing performances in the city. This picture was taken in the 1950s, showing Ruben Ribeiro on the left performing for the audience. The back of the stage is adorned with a beautiful Art Deco style painting. This was the location of the Golden Slippers nightclub at Furnani Mansion. As you can see, this place has seen better days. The building still stands, but the dance club, like much of Calcutta's jazz scene, has faded into the history books. The cinema halls, jazz clubs, and imposing office buildings tell the story of Calcutta's prosperity, but they are also witness to the worst days of the city. Their history is intertwined inseparably with that of Calcutta during the Second World War. Calcutta today is almost synonymous with poverty and economic stagnation. This was not the case for most of its history. Till about 1935, Calcutta was the undisputed financial and industrial capital of India, with Bombay being the second most important city. That changed first with the banking crisis of 1935, which affected Calcutta more than Bombay. However, worse was to come as India was dragged into the Second World War. The period of the 1940s saw many stylish Art Deco buildings come up while famine and disaster loomed in the background. While American GIs were entertaining themselves at the Art Deco theaters of central Calcutta, millions of Bengalis would starve to death. Pictured here is a crowd of starving farmers gathered near the gates of the Art Deco Broadway Hotel on GC Avenue, awaiting their daily rations. For comparison, here is a recent picture of Broadway Hotel. It was one of several business hotels that emerged in central Calcutta along Ganesh Avenue as it became a hub for new office buildings. It is built in an elegant Art Deco style, topped by a ziggurat frieze along the roof and columns that grace its facade. Here we see a rare old photo of Hindustan buildings taken by the military photographer George Pankratz. You see a small part of the facade of the Magnet House to the left and to the right corner of the Hindustan buildings, highlighting the curved, streamlined modern design. One can notice the military trucks flying along Central Avenue here. During the Second World War, about 5,000 American GIs would pass by Calcutta. Many of them would report here to the Hindustan buildings. The Hindustan buildings had been taken over by the government to house the Allied Staff Office for the Burma China India Theatre. Calcutta was the most important logistical and trading hub of the British Empire in the East, and much of the Allied war effort on Southeast Asia was coordinated from here. The importance of Calcutta in the Second World War has been largely forgotten by historians, but the city was already the largest port in Asia at the time and had a sizable industrial and transportation infrastructure. Calcutta had one of India's first airports. During the war, it was the main logistics hub for the Burma China India Theatre, making it the center for coordinating supply flights into nationalist China across the Himalayas. Despite this importance, the British were slow to realize and build up adequate air defenses. Some of Calcutta's road infrastructure was given over for military purposes. Seen here is a Hawker Hurricane taking off from Red Road, a prominent avenue in the heart of the city. The arrival of thousands of American GIs created a cultural shift in the city. Calcutta's entertainment zones were geared to fulfilling the demand of this new clientele. American movies, American music, and even American radio, American ice cream, American baseball made its appearance in Calcutta. Indians in the city were open to a new culture, a new world. However, British authorities took effort to regulate the interaction between Allied GIs and the local Indian population. This worked better for white American soldiers than for black American GIs, who interacted more openly with the locals. One can see a bit of the contrast in that approach in these two pictures. The white American soldier buys cigarettes from a street vendor in Calcutta's Esplanade, in the heart of Calcutta's White Zone, while the black American GIs here visit North Calcutta's iconic Jain Temple. Central Calcutta's Art Deco landmarks were repurposed for the war effort. It wasn't just Hindustan buildings, but the Tower House as well, Calcutta's first Art Deco landmark, which would serve the war effort in its own way. The top floor of the Tower House hosted the Voice of America radio station, broadcasting American news and entertainment for American soldiers stationed in the city. In this picture, you can see a convoy of military trucks flying down Central Avenue. This was Calcutta's traffic during wartime, much of which had been taken over by US led Allied forces for smoother flow of logistics. Much of the present day Calcutta's traffic system has its origin to this time period. This picture as well was taken by George Bankers. Here is Central Avenue today, looking north from the Esplanade crossing, the Hindustan buildings in the background, with its neoclassical statesman house in the foreground. The war came to Calcutta at a time when it could ill afford it. The economic shock of the banking crisis in the 1930s, that the disruption of the Second World War hit. Yet the turbulence affected different sections of the population differently. For Calcutta's wealthy elite, times were still good. They built mansions like the one in North Calcutta that you see here, along the new northern extension of Central Avenue. The Seksaria mansion was built in 1943 for the Seksaria family. They were a wealthy Marwari family of Calcutta with business interests in Bombay and Bengal. The family poured a sizable amount into creating one of the most beautiful Art Deco apartments in the city. It is replete with beautiful decorative motifs, some of which takes after traditional Indian temple art, like the bell motif. One can see chevrons adorning the wall of the buildings just under the ledges, while the inverted shell motifs in the roof friezes adorn the roof. It is remarkable to think that such an opulent building was being constructed while Bengal was in the grips of one of the worst man made famines in history. Following the rapid advance of the Japanese across Southeast Asia, the British government in India imposed a policy of denial in Bengal. This policy was, in essence, a scorched earth policy designed to deny the advancing Japanese access to Bengal's sizable food resources and riverine infrastructure. The result of this policy was an artificially created food shortage, which culminated in the Bengal famine at the end of 1942. By 1943, relief measures were put in place to mitigate the damage, but it was too little too late. The turbulence of the war, the famine, the ensuing political and social upheaval marked an end to the glamour days of Art Deco in Calcutta. Pictured here are the refugees from the countryside in Calcutta awaiting rations. Picture by George Bankers. The Bengal famine would take the lives of about 3 million of Bengal citizens. It was the seminal disaster that hit Calcutta, bookending a historical period of prosperity in the city's history. It also marked an end to the economic prosperity which made possible the flourishing of Calcutta's Art Deco. The coming of the Second World War spelled the end of Calcutta's boom time, but it also paved the way for a changed city. The urban expansion and revitalization, which was taking place from the 1920s, also pushed the city's boundaries southwards, creating suburban expansion into the southern periphery of Calcutta. The decade of the 1930s and 40s marked the beginning of the neighborhoods along Ravindra Sarovar Lake and Ballygunge. As the north grew more crowded, its buildings began to wear. The upwardly mobile middle class and intelligentsia sought new beginning. The southern suburban expansion was fueled by this migration of North Calcuttans to the south. Art Deco was the architecture of choice for this new neighborhood, much like it was for Central Avenue farther up north. Pictured here is an Art Deco mansion opposite the Ravindra Sarovar Lake, picture taken by George Pancras in 1944. While Calcutta's borders were being expanded southwards, redevelopment took place in some of the older pre-existing suburbs further north. Pictured here is what was then a newly built apartment at 15 Loudon Street, at the heart of Calcutta's European neighborhood, called the Sidebar or White Town. Even as Calcutta was being bombed, apartments like these were being built by the city's wealthy, for whom the horrors of war and famine were distant. These developments set the stage for Calcutta's suburban expansion and the beginning of what would be the last chapter of its Art Deco heritage. No longer characterized by grand monumental constructions or glamorous theatres, but by quaint, elegant bungalow houses, which draws much of its aesthetic sensibilities from streamlined modern. The urban expansion plans initiated in the 1930s continued on after independence, with new suburbs being established to the east and south of the city. Over the decade of the 1940s and well into the 1950s, more of the city's middle class felt the need to move to these airy, planned suburbs, leaving the alleys of North and Central Calcutta behind. The various Calcutta Improvement Trust scheme improvements in Eastern Calcutta, North Calcutta near Tala Park, and later on in neighborhoods like Lake Town and Dum Dum Park, would see Art Deco continue for the first 2 decades after independence. South Calcutta would see more Art Deco buildings being constructed than any other part of the city. But gone were the grand mansions, apartment buildings, and offices of the 1930s and early 40s. Art Deco in Calcutta would now be defined by the suburban bungalow. 2 whole decades after its heyday, Art Deco in Calcutta still inspired a sense and style of newness and modernity. It was synonymous with the new social realities that was shaped by nationalism and now confirmed by independence. The pictures you see here are two images of the map of Calcutta's Art Deco buildings. On the left is central Calcutta's Art Deco clusters, where the first Art Deco buildings were built. On the right, we see the spread of Art Deco architecture moving further south and east along Park Circus and then towards Rabindra Sarovar at the very bottom of the right side picture. Calcutta has historically expanded going northwards and southwards along the banks of the Hooghly River. With the expansion of the 1930s and 1940s, we witnessed the birth of new Art Deco clusters in the city and the southern and eastern expansions. The house pictured here stands on Lake Road, one of the arterial roads of Southern Avenue in the region around Rabindra Sarovar. It reflects a typical architectural sensibility of South Calcutta bungalows, emphasizing a streamlined modern build with rounded windows, geometric patterns, port windows, and ledges forming the core of its architectural adornments. Park Circus, located somewhat to the east of the city, was one of the zones where Calcutta expanded eastwards. This was one of the many mixed neighborhoods of the city where Anglo-Indians and Muslim families resided. Now it is predominantly affluent, upwardly mobile, middle-class Muslims who reside here. Alongside houses, there are a few large institutional buildings like the Central Detective Training School, built in the Indie Deco style, incorporating Mughal architectural ideas with Art Deco. The building draws heavily from Mughal and Indo-Saracenic revival architecture while keeping an Art Deco frame. Most prominent features here are the octagonal columns on the facade and the ledges along the top of the sides of the buildings. Calcutta's suburban expansion did not end with the 40s but continued on for the first decade after independence. The neighborhoods around Uttadanga, Lake Town, Dum Dum Park were established shortly after independence, in the decade of the 1950s. An example of this period of Art Deco is this building, which stands in Uttadanga, built in around 1966, drawing heavily from the architecture of central Calcutta, which features cantilevered balconies and stylized ledges. This late period of Art Deco construction represents the last days of Art Deco in Calcutta, as the style faded from people's consciousness. These buildings stand as the swan song of Art Deco in Calcutta, as the style made an elegant, graceful exit from the city's urban landscape. Thus, we end our journey tracing the rise and fall of Calcutta's Art Deco. Today, over 300 Art Deco structures still stand in the city, with many having bitten the dust to relentless redevelopment. In this centenary of Art Deco, this is my own humble effort at putting the spotlight on the forgotten Art Deco heritage of Calcutta. I would like to thank Calcutta Heritage Collective, who have given me this wonderful platform and the support to help further my endeavors to preserve Calcutta's Art Deco. I would also like to thank the wonderful people at Mumbai Art Deco, whose achievements to preserve Art Deco in Mumbai are truly inspiring and whose website presents a great source for my own research. I would like to thank Mr. Chandra Prakash Agarwal, friend of our effort and a fan of Calcutta Art Deco, who has been the most helpful source of information and old archival images. I would also like to thank Mr. Brian Paul Bach for his help with research and whose wonderful book on Calcutta has been one of the most enlightening reads. I would also like to thank the Bengal Film Archive, which has painstakingly archived the history of Bengal's fading single screen cinema halls. Lastly, I would like to thank the fine folks at fine folks at Chicago Art Deco Society for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share the beauty of Calcutta's Art Deco with the world. Thank you.
Now, I would like to invite Mukul Agrawal, who is the founder trustee of Calcutta Heritage Collective, to give us some more information about the topic. Mukul, are you here? Can we hear your audio?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, so we can hear you and we can see you.
Yeah.
How are you, Mukul?
So thank you. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zarko, for this introduction. And for all who don't know about the Calcutta Heritage Collective, I'd like to introduce in one sentence that it's a voluntary citizens initiative formed with the objective of restoring, reviving, and reusing the built heritage in Kolkata, which is by now you know that it's a prominent city in Eastern India. And before we move on to the many questions shared, I'd also like to take a moment to express my gratitude to Mr. Joseph Londi, co-president of the Chicago Art Deco Society, for so graciously collaborating with us at the Calcutta Heritage Collective, and to Mr. Zarko and the whole team of CADS for helping organize this session and giving us, Calcutta Heritage Collective, especially Adhiraj, the opportunity to present the Art Deco movement in Calcutta. And a big thank you to Adhiraj, who's a member of CHC, for this wonderfully informative presentation. I'm sure most of us today feel far more enlightened about Art Deco, I do at least, about how and why this remarkable design movement evolved. What is especially fascinating is that in Kolkata too, the movement began around the same period within just a few years, despite communication being nowhere as quick or effortless as it is today. And finally, on behalf of CADS and CHC, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to all of you who have joined us from various parts of the world. Mrs. Zarko, do you want to do the Q&A now?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for all your remarks. Adhiraj, let's check your microphone. How are you?
I think it's working.
Yes, I think it's working wonderfully. And I also wanted to thank you again for joining us for the Q&A and for hopefully answering all our questions today. Do you feel like you're ready to begin?
Sure, let's start.
Let's start. Is there any
I
authority
would
in
just like
India?
to take a few seconds.
Yes, go
I would
ahead,
just
please.
like to take a few seconds and thank one of the fans of our page, Tapo Banerjee, who has a wonderful collection of photos of Art Deco buildings on his Instagram page as well. And one of the pictures have actually been used in the presentation. So I just wanted to give a shout out. Thanks for your appreciation and enthusiasm.
Thank you. Adhiraj, is there any authority in India to preserve historic buildings?
I will forward this question to Mukul because she has been far more involved for a far longer period with preservation and conservation. Mughal?
Mukul, please go ahead.
Okay. Yes, yes. There is one, the primary authority in India is actually the Archaeological Survey of India, the AISI as it is known, and it is under the Ministry of Culture. But it does protect the nationally important monuments and sites. But at the same time, we also have a body called INTAC, which is the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. And now India is a large country divided into small states. So state governments and municipal bodies also have a heritage department where they are responsible for taking care of the heritage precincts and monuments, so as to say. And of course, we are there also as a body which is trying to create awareness amongst all the masses, among citizens of Kolkata, of Calcutta, I should say. Yes, and I think we have been blessed with some results. We are also ourselves um, taken up a very good project called the Chaitanya Library, which was built 135 years old. And we are in the process of preserving it and reusing it, ensuring that it is and sustainable in the long run, including all the books, the 1.5 lakhs books that it has.
Adhiraj, did you want to add something to this?
No, I just wanted to clarify 1.5 lakhs means 150,000 for our American
Yeah,
viewers.
sorry. Yes.
Now, the next question we have is from Jason. Are there any historic buildings that have been converted or still used as music venues?
Yes. Now I'll focus on the Art Deco buildings. There have been a few which have been reused and restored as cafes or as retail venues, and one in particular is a new emerging center of jazz in Calcutta. So there is this, let me just check the name briefly. It is Ormond Jazz Club in South Calcutta. Yes, Kinemos Jazz Club in South Calcutta. It is housed in a beautiful, streamlined, modern Art Deco bungalow in the Rabindra Sarovar area. So it is from that period of construction when Calcutta was expanding southwards. This is actually the area where you'll see most of the repurposing and restoration work and the most awareness towards Art Deco heritage. So as far as music venues are concerned, Skinny Mouse Jazz Club would be your uh, main place to go.
The next question, we have to start a little bit with the history. I know ziggurat style is a pyramid with 4 sides, square base, and a flat top. How does this apply to Art Deco when the buildings have vertical sides?
Okay, so the ziggurat style influenced several design motifs. Often, as we see in the case of the Broadway Hotel, again, I'll have to refer back to the presentation for this. In case of the Broadway Hotel, the frieze has a distinct pyramidal pattern. It goes up in steps. So the ziggurat style is incorporated there. Or in case of bungalows, for instance, often the ziggurat style would be incorporated into the roof frieze or a decorative element in arches. Sometimes what we would see is older non-Art Deco buildings, either they may be neoclassical or Baroque, they contain certain Art Deco decorative elements. So either a waterfall frieze or a ziggurat style frieze and so on. I hope that answers the question.
I hope so as well. Are there any Art Deco tours that we can visit in Calcutta?
Well, I am developing a Art Deco walking tour along the central part of the city, And I also give tours on request. So if you're ever coming to Calcutta, we can arrange a tour specifically for you or a group. And I've also conducted walking tours with CHC. In fact, we have a tour planned next week.
At the moment, I'm
So,
not seeing any more questions. Mukul, please go ahead. Whatever you wanted to add.
no. I was just saying that so in CHC, Adhiraj is doing the North Kolkata part where he's an expert at, and we have another member who is actually serving the Southern Calcutta Art Deco architecture, and she will be very soon also developing a walk within January, and she'll be conducting it. So we'll have two areas, and yeah. So anyone coming to Calcutta, please touch base, and we hope to help you with this.
Does the weather in Calcutta destroy the buildings? I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I would take this question to Mughal.
Well, Calcutta is a hot and humid city, except for 2 months, the December and January months. In when now we are sitting in fantastic weather, went to school. But yes, the weather does affect, and uh, there's a lot of hard work which needs to be done to preserve them. And unfortunately, for various reasons, which if I begin here, it will become a long conversation. We are not being able to. But yes, luckily, there is now an awareness, and some smaller structures have, like Adhiraj has mentioned earlier, has been reused.
Well, thank you for answering all our questions. Joe, please, our president from Chicago Art Deco Society, please go ahead and give us any closing remarks if you have.
Well, I want to thank everyone who participated in making this possible. As you can see, it's a unique presentation for us. So many of the presentations in Art Deco emphasize the glamour. This was a little grittier than most, but I think you'll agree it's an important story, and we're so pleased that we were able to cooperate with our friends in Calcutta to bring it to a larger audience. So thank you, and you will receive information about how to request a a link to the recording and the transcript of this event. Thank you so much.